I would like to talk, the name of the talk tonight is called Precious Human Birth. And that's a very classic phrase and understanding in Buddhism, that human birth is precious, and it's precious to be alive in this form and this realm that we call the human realm. And there's a number of reasons why I wanted to talk about precious human birth. One is I had a birthday last week. Last week, yeah. And I turned 75. And, that's a big number, or a good number. Seems like a big number to me. And so that was kind of exciting to be born and alive, still alive at 75, 3/4 of a century. And so I was appreciating my own birth and being born. And as part of my present, which wasn't really, mostly I don't even think about presents for birthdays, but the combination of our experience was that our daughter is working in London at this time, so we had decided to go visit her in London. And so that was like my present, was going to London to visit our daughter. And it was great to be in Europe because we were both in London visiting our daughter, and then we went to Paris. And I've never been to Paris before. And for those of you who've been to Paris, Paris is something. Paris is cool in my language. I liked Paris very much, and I loved the artwork that I saw in Paris. We went to the Picasso Museum. They have one museum called and there was nobody there. There was just Picasso was there, and there was almost no people. And there's something about getting up close to the artwork. It's much better than in photographs, at least in my experience, and appreciating the humans who've created this kind of artwork for centuries and centuries, since drawing on the caves, right, and creating artwork that way. And so I was appreciating that as part of my thinking about precious human birth. And I love that Paris was born. And Paris is, I found out, called the City of Lights. And the reason it is because the first real lit up city was Paris with electricity, which I didn't know that before. And when I was talking with a friend of mine about giving this talk and about talking about precious human birth, and he's an old friend, and he's also a Dharma person, and I said, what should I say? You have any suggestions? He said, tell him about your daughter's birth. And I thought, I forget. Yeah, my daughter was born. And my daughter, who we just visited, who's not a baby anymore, but I remember her birth. And the reason he told me to say this, because it was so miraculous. And it wasn't miraculous because it was special. It was miraculous because she was born. And you never know what's going to happen. And I'd never been to a birth before. My daughter was born. And when her mom was, giving birth, it was wild to watch the birth happen. And the amazing aliveness that women have as bodies come out of them. I mean, and my daughter's mom, she was not happy lying on the bed trying to give birth, and so she was at one point walking around, and then the contractions were coming, and so she started squatting, and so she squatted my daughter out. And it was wild to watch my daughter appear out of her mother's vagina, right? Like, that's just the wildest thing. And so that kind of preciousness is something that's in my psyche from being there. And what was amazing, what my friend was really pointing at, because he wasn't at the birth and he didn't see my daughter coming out, but he remembers me talking about what happened as I walked home from the hospital, because we had the birth in what was called an ABC, Alternative Birth Center, which is a place in a hospital where you have a midwife really do the birth. You do the birth like it's a natural birth, but you're in the hospital in case there's any problems. And so we had the baby with no problems, which is in itself precious. And then I walked home about 8 blocks to get some things, and then walked back to the hospital as my wife, her mom, was recovering. And as I walked back, when I was looking at people, I just could see everybody as a baby, because I realized, and I could see it now, it's like we were all babies, and somewhere that baby is right here, right? However old, the baby is now, whether it's James or Tomas or Erica or Virgil or Karen or Barbara or Heather. I mean, the baby, we were all babies. And that babiness is not gone. And in that, I mean that aliveness, that magic, that preciousness is actually right here. And it's something that Buddhism recognizes, the preciousness of human birth, and that we're all alive. Yeah, it was wild it changed my perception of reality than to see everybody as babies. Because if we look around the world, all humans were babies. And they are part of that preciousness. And so another reason why I wanted to talk about the preciousness of being human has to do with what's going on in our world. And one of the key things that's going on in our world, especially in our local world, which is not local at all anymore, meaning in the world is way too small for any one place to be local. It's all right here. The whole world is right here these days. And so the protests that are in the foreground of the United States, the student protests about Gaza and Israel and the conflict there, is part of why I wanted to talk about the preciousness of human life, the preciousness of being human. Because whatever side people may find themselves on in this conflict, or in their opinions about the conflict, it's still about precious human beings. Both sides are precious human beings. And one of the things that makes it more acute at this time is the immediacy and the intimacy that happens with the news, because it's all like that, like that, like that. We're seeing people live dying, and we're seeing cities being destroyed. And we also are seeing and learning about the different ways the different sides treat each other horribly. And I'm going to say more, I'm going to put it in more context, because you see some things about Gaza being destroyed by the Netanyahu administration, and then you see something like, if you've seen that video called Screams Before Silence by Sheryl Sandberg, it's hard to watch. I still haven't watched all of it, because it's talking about what happened to the women who were abducted by the by Hamas and the kind of I don't even know the right words, brutality, horror of what was done to them. And the question for us as practitioners is, how do we respond from a dharmic perspective? How do we respond from a skillful perspective? How do we keep seeing the preciousness of human life on both sides and understand how Buddhism understands it, that may support us at staying present, staying aware, staying awake, and acting as wisely as possible to respond to the dukkha, or the suffering of the world that this is part of. And so one of the things I'd like to talk about tonight is the context of human life in terms of Buddhist cosmology. And Buddhist cosmology highly values human life, right? And the understanding is understood in what's called the wheel of life in Buddhism, and it's the recognition of the interconnectedness of all living things, the interconnectedness of all living things, and the interconnectedness of all the potential for different beings and different states of consciousness to awaken. And it really sees both the interconnectedness and the fleeting nature of human existence. And so I've asked Johnny to show an image for all of you right now, and the image is the wheel of life. And I'm just looking at the image with you. And the wheel of life, you can see, has 6 realms. It has a God realm, or Brahma realm, or heavenly realm, or what's called the Deva realms, which are the highest realm, right? And then the second realm is also a God realm, but it's the Titans, or Ashuras, or the jealous gods, right? The gods aren't quite so happy, so they're already come down a notch from the heavenly realm. And then the third realm is the human realm, which we are part of. And the fourth realm is the animal realm, the realm of animals. And the fifth realm is what's called the hungry ghosts. And the sixth realm is the hell realms. And I'll explain a little more about each realm in a minute. Because there's 2 upper realms, the Brahma realms and the Titans, or the Asuras. And then there's the lower realms, which are the animal realms, the hungry ghosts, the hell realms. And then the human realm, which is really associated more with the upper realms, but is in between the 2 realms of the higher realms and the lower realms. And the understanding in this teaching in Buddhism is that karma and the interconnectedness of all things plays a role in what realm we're born in, and that if, generally you could say if we harm or hurt people, we end up born in a lower realm, or if we indulge our instincts, we could be born in an animal realm, or if we're very kind or giving, we'll be reborn in an upper realm. Or we could be reborn in the human realm. And these, in Buddhist societies, reincarnation, rebirth are given. And you don't have to believe or buy that. It's not a given in the Western culture, reincarnation. But there's another way to understand this cosmology, and that these are different mind states, or states of consciousness, that are being described, these higher realms and these lower realms. And they're states of experience that we may be born into every day. And you may be able to recognize it as I say a little more. So the God realm, or the heavenly realm, is a kind of blissful or ethereal state of heart and mind, where one feels really totally content or supremely content, but at the same time might be oblivious to the suffering of others. Like we might be having, it might be so good for us, we don't even know that our partner or our friends are suffering, or that the world is suffering because we've got it so good today or in the moment. And so we're in a heavenly realm in our hearts and minds. Or we can be in the realm of the Tetons, or the jealous gods they're sometimes called. And that's when we have it all good, but our experience is still fueled by a kind of egoic aggression or jealousy, where we're always striving. We need more. We always need some more. We're never satisfied. And it's, even if we're the CEO, we want more. And then the human realm, right, which is very passionate and very perceptive. And human beings experience many states of heart and mind. And it's considered in the Buddhist realm, and you may notice this for yourself, that when we're really here, when we're here, landed in ourselves, in our body, in our heart, in our mind, in our humanness, we have the most opportunity to be free. To be free even when there's difficulty, even when we're not happy, even when things are really good. There's a kind of balance that comes when we land in the human realm. And the lower realms, right? We are animals, so we also are part of the animal realm. And there's sometimes when we want to live life in a kind of ignorant complacency, right? And that we don't care about things. One doesn't look beyond avoiding pain and seeking comfort, period. Like, I just want the status quo good enough. And there's a kind of there's not a kind of sharpness to consciousness, and not a kind of awakeness to consciousness, right? It's just status quo, and that's enough. Or sometimes our consciousness is in the hungry ghost realm, and we're always frustrated. We're always feeling we can't get what we want, or we can't get our desires fulfilled. And, the hungry ghosts are depicted with big bellies and tiny mouths, that we're always hungry for more. And that's part of the egoic structure. The ego is actually never fully satisfied, because the ego is made up. It's not the essence of who and what we are. It's part of a psychic structure that's important to be born in the world, and part of our development, but it's not the end of who and what we are. And so the egoic structure is always hungry because it's missing the essence of who and what we are. And then the hell realms, which I believe all of us has experienced, right? That's a kind of claustrophobic place of extreme difficulty, or where you can't escape the torment of your own anger or hatred or frustration or wanting, and it's just fired up. And I'm sure all of you have experienced that. And I described it last time I was here teaching, talking about I had a big reaction to my brother being here, and how I was just furious in the middle of the night and keeping myself up because I was in a hell realm. And my brother was sleeping or doing whatever he was doing, but I was in the hell realm. And that's what I'm saying about it. These are states of consciousness that we can recognize, or the different forms of existence in which we take an emotional or energetic or psychological rebirth, right? And that we experience in the human realm, and that we can be in a hell realm for an hour or a day or more than a day. And then it can relax, and then it starts to become more calmer, and then we get in the human realm, and then all of a sudden things are good, and somebody does something we want them to do, and we're happy, and all of a sudden we find ourselves, we're like in a heaven realm. Everything's good. Everything's going our way. We feel light, easy. It's like we're above it all. And that's what it means to be in a heaven realm. It's above. And then things change because things change. And then we remember that we didn't do our taxes and they're overdue and we need to get some help with them. So maybe we drop back into the human realm. But it can be a very helpful way to understand our hearts and minds is to recognize these different components of the wheel of life, these different realms of reality, because we can wake up in each realm. Right? And part of what's important is that no realm is permanent, even though it may feel permanent sometimes. But really, the realm of suffering and the realm of freedom are not separate, because freedom is always found here, it's always found now, and it can be found within our suffering. And of course, that's the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, right? The Four Noble Truths, which are the archetypal teaching of the Buddha, is that there is suffering, there's a cause suffering, there's freedom from suffering, and there's a path or a life to live together that we can awaken in. And this human realm is characterized by this embodied awareness, by embodied consciousness, that we are embodied beings who can know our embodiment, right? And one of the things that underscores the human experience is the quest for freedom, the quest for release from suffering. And it's not just to be okay. There's actually, we can be okay and then still suffer. And so there's a kind of freedom that humans seek that they inherently are called to. It's sometimes called the awakening instinct, or the instinct for liberation. And it's characterized by the movement to authenticity and to learning, to understanding, to acceptance, to oneness, to unification. And it's the movement from confusion to understanding, to awakening. And of course, it always poses this fundamental question, which is, who and what are we, right? Who are we really? Beyond our ideas, beyond our beliefs, beyond our name, beyond the roles that we take, whether we're the CEO or the rebel, or whether we're the teachers or administrators, or whether we're students, or whether we're a husband or wife or partner or lover, or if we're celibate. Who are you, and what is the lived experience? What is that precious aliveness itself? Can you feel it right now? And you can drop that image, Johnny, if you would. Thank you. Yeah, good. Then I can see everybody again. Who and what are we? And what is this aliveness that is understanding what I'm saying and that is speaking to you, right? Because it's this aliveness is speaking. And what is this human potential, in the human realm, this potential for awakening, right? That's sitting right here. And we can keep discovering the goodness and wisdom that is right here in you. And so the Satipatthana Sutta, which is really the teaching of mindfulness in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Satipatthana begins with 4 qualities. And the 4 qualities are ardency, clearly knowing, mindfulness, concentration. And ardency is about a certain kind of passion. I'll say more in a moment. Clearly knowing is cultivating clear comprehension of what's happening in the moment. And mindfulness becomes the gateway to wisdom. And concentration is the support for that, because it's a collection of consciousness, a collection of heart and mind and awareness in the present moment, which the present moment reveals the presence of wisdom, of awakening, of liberation. And one of the things I like about ardency, it's really about our devotion to practice. My friend Joseph Goldstein calls it a balanced and sustained application of effort. And it's about what sustains our practice through the ups and downs of our meditation, what sustains our practice through the ups and downs of our life. And he said, ardency also suggests warmth or passionate enthusiasm, or devotion, because we see the practice and the Dharma as valuable. And then the way to cultivate ardency is to first reflect on the rarity of a precious human birth. That reflection is really the source of our energy and our devotion and our steadfastness and our dedication and our love that fuels waking up. So he says that first we reflect on the rarity of a precious human birth and the rarity of connecting with the Dharma. And Joseph often says, how many people who think of practice actually do it? And how many people who start practice actually continue? And of course, if you're here, you're continuing right now, because this is practice. And I'll just say a couple more things because I like ardency. But Joseph said the second reflection is on impermanence and the ungraspability of reality. That whatever is born will die, whatever is joined will come apart, whatever is gathered will disperse, whatever is high will fall. And it's just pointing at the reality of impermanence, that there is nothing solid in our reality. Everything's just here for a moment, like the breath, or a sound, or a smell, or a taste, or a touch, or a sensation. And we can begin to abide in the freedom of resting in the impermanent nature of reality. And of course, he said the third reflection is on karma, that everything comes from our body, speech, and thought. Everything that comes from our body, our speech, our thought has an effect on the world, impacts the world. And the effects of our karma are really what we possess. And so I mention all of this because as I was contemplating the student protests and what's happening in the colleges in the United States, and of course the war in Israel, Gaza, I saw an article by Jerry Rubin's son. And if some of you may know who Jerry Rubin was, he was an anti-war hippie from the 60s. And I spent time around Jerry, and his son wrote an article, and he said, this is definitely not my dad's anti-war protest. And he was coming down against what the people were doing at colleges. And of course, Jerry Rubin was an icon of the 60s protests. And his son said, he said, my dad knew the difference between genuine activism for peace and today's violent extremism. And so the sons had a big reaction to what's going on. And I remember the 60s, and I was part of that protest. And I was part of trying to stop the war in Vietnam. And it was passionate. And there was a kind of passionate, youthful righteousness about what was happening. And I see the same kind of passionate righteousness that the young people have today. And in the 60s, we were sure, we knew the truth, and we were for peace and freedom, and we were going to stop the war. And I believe we did help stop the war. But also, I saw what I saw in Jerry Rubin's son. His son is Adam Rubin, is that he was idealizing the past, and he was idealizing what his father did. Because, as one of my friends who I talked to about this, he wrote me a beautiful note after reading the article, and he was there in the 60s also, and so he wrote this. And he's an attorney and a Zen practitioner. And he said, writing to me, he wrote, "You were there, Eugene, and so was I. We weren't just about peace. We were demonstrating for the Vietnam people's liberation. Sometimes we chanted, all we are saying is give peace a chance. But more often it was ho, 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 Chi Minh, ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh, the NFL is going to win," right? And so we were supporting a certain side, right? And then he said, and my friend continued to write, he said, as for support for violent means, remember the Weathermen? If those of you who don't know the Weathermen were a very violent group that came out of the anti-war movement, and I knew the Weathermen, and they were for violence to stop the war. And my friend wrote, he said, while most of us remain committed to nonviolence mostly, I think the same is probably true of the current crop of demonstrators. There are always some idiots. Right? And he's saying the movement towards violence is not helpful. And then my friend went on, he said, the big differences for me, where I think the article that Adam Rubin wrote strikes some true tones, are our support for one historically oppressed people never shaded into race hatred for another historically oppressed people. That's a key line, what my friend said. Our support for one historically oppressed people never shaded into race hatred for another historically oppressed people. Now, my friend went on, and he's definitely got his side, his view. He said, far as I can tell, the, quote, liberation for Palestine being urged would, as a practical matter, result in the creation of another reactionary crypto-fascist Islamic state dedicated to the genocide of Jews. And then my friend, and that's his view, right? And that's an interesting perspective also, because that's possible. Because as far as I understand, Hamas is for the destruction of Israel and all the Jews there, period. I don't get they're just for liberating Palestine. And my friend goes on, he says, so this is about the stickiest situation I can recall ever. Remember, he was through the 60s war and the Vietnam War in the 60s and Nixon and a lot of stickiness in politics. He said, this is about the stickiest situation I can recall ever. Not sure that what the way out is, but I don't think overgeneralizations about Jews, about Palestinians, or about the kids protesting the insane actions of the Netanyahu crowd are helping anybody. Again, I think that's an important line, in my opinion, that the overgeneralizations about Jews, Palestinians, or the kids protesting are helping anybody, right? because youth has something to offer here, because it's passionate about what it sees and knows. It really is permeable to reality in a way. As we get older, we're not as permeable. We see the more the big picture. And that's the Buddhist view, right? That when we seeing both sides, seeing the tragedy of both sides, which is really part of the hell realms, and the anger without intelligence, and the sorrow of seeing the pain and hurt of every being involved. This is where compassion arises quite spontaneously when we stay present in the human realm. And I could so just to appreciate that even with what's everything that's going on in the world, we have this opportunity to come together here and to practice together and to awaken together moment by moment by moment. And hopefully our awakening will bring a compassion to ourselves and to the suffering that we experience and the suffering our loved ones experience and the suffering in this nation and the suffering in all nations. And may that compassion go in every direction, touching beings in every realm. May all beings be happy and peaceful. May all beings be free from suffering, free from pain, free from harm. May all beings awaken and realize their true nature, their Buddha nature. May all beings be free.